The Guardian's discovery. The autumn wind carried the scent of pine and something else, something that made Raven's ears prick forward and her muscles tense. The black Belgian Malinois paused mid-stride, her enhanced olfactory sensors processing the unfamiliar scent. Behind her, Marcus Wright adjusted his grip on the pulse rifle, reading his partner's body language with the expertise of someone who'd spent 5 years in the Interstellar Defense Force's K-9 unit. The forest stretched before them, a maze of ancient trees reaching toward the golden sunset. This far from the settlements, the wilderness remained untamed, a perfect hiding place for those who wished to remain unseen. Marcus hadn't expected to find anything during their routine patrol of the outer territories, but Raven's behavior told him otherwise. "What is it, girl?" he whispered, crouching beside her. Raven's cybernetic eye glowed a soft blue in the growing dusk, scanning the terrain ahead. The implant had been necessary after a close encounter with a plasma burst during the Centauri conflict, but it had only made her more effective at her job. A distant crash echoed through the trees, followed by the distinctive whine of failing anti-grav technology. Marcus's heart rate quickened. He knew that sound. They hadn't encountered alien technology since the peace treaties were signed 3 years ago, which meant whatever had crashed wasn't supposed to be here. Raven moved forward, her movements silent and precise. Marcus followed, years of training allowing him to match her stealth. They crested a small ridge, and there in the valley below lay the source of the disturbance, a sleek vessel of unmistakably Zrillian design, its silver hull breached and smoking. The Zrillians were supposed to be allies now, after decades of Cold War and occasional skirmishes. Their presence in restricted Earth airspace could restart a conflict that had nearly destroyed both civilizations. Marcus activated his neural comm link, preparing to report the incident, but Raven's low growl made him pause. A figure emerged from the wreckage, stumbling and clearly injured. In the fading light, Marcus could make out the characteristic bioluminescent markings of Zrillian, but something was wrong. The patterns were different, more erratic than any he'd seen before. The alien collapsed, and Raven bolted forward before Marcus could stop her. He cursed under his breath and followed. As they approached, he realized why the markings had seemed strange. They weren't natural. Surgical scars crisscrossed the alien's pale skin, and what looked like experimental cybernetic implants pulsed with an unhealthy red glow. Raven reached the fallen figure first, but instead of showing aggression, she began gently nudging the alien's shoulder. Marcus had never seen her behave this way toward a non-human before. The Zrillian's eyes fluttered open, revealing irises that shifted color like oil on water. "Please," the alien spoke in heavily accented English. "They must not find me." A trembling hand reached toward Marcus, revealing a data crystal clutched in long fingers. The experiments. The truth. The whir of approaching drones cut through the air. Marcus recognized the sound signature, Earth Force security units. He had seconds to make a decision that could change everything. His duty was clear: report the incident, secure the crash site, and detain any survivors. But Raven's behavior, the alien's obvious medical manipulation, and years of questioning the official narrative of the war made him hesitate. "Can you move?" he asked, already reaching for his medical kit. The alien nodded weakly. "Good, because we need to disappear fast." He administered a universal healing compound, hoping it would work on Zrillian physiology. "I'm Marcus. The dog is Raven. And you are?" "Designation J-17, the alien whispered, then added with what might have been bitterness. "Once, I was called Nexus." The drones were getting closer. Marcus helped Nexus to their feet, noting how light they were. "Well, Nexus, if you're running from who I think you're running from, we need to move now. There's an old mining tunnel network half a click east. Raven, point." The dog immediately took point position, leading them through the deepening shadows. Marcus supported Nexus as they moved, questions burning in his mind. The alien clutched the data crystal like a lifeline, and Marcus knew that whatever information it contained had been worth risking everything to protect. They reached the tunnel entrance just as the first drone swept overhead. Marcus activated his old battlefield cloaking device, praying it still had enough charge to mask their heat signatures. As they descended into the darkness, Raven's cybernetic eye providing guidance, he realized there was no going back. Whatever conspiracy Nexus was involved in, whatever truth lay hidden in that crystal, they were now part of it. The tunnel stretched before them like the neural networks of some vast underground creature. Somewhere in the darkness ahead lay answers, danger, and perhaps a chance to expose whatever shadowy experiments had left their mark on their new companion. But for now, they moved in silence, three fugitives bound together by circumstance and the weight of secrets yet to be revealed. Behind them, on the surface, the drones continued their search pattern, their automated sensors seeking targets that had already vanished into the Earth's embrace. The game of cat and mouse had begun, but this time, the mouse had teeth, training, and a very special dog on its side. Beneath enemy lines, the mining tunnels wound deeper beneath the Earth, their ancient support beams groaning with secrets. Marcus's wrist display cast a pale blue glow across the rough-hewn walls as he checked their position relative to the surface. They'd been moving for 3 hours, each step taking them further from the search patterns of the drones above, but closer to something else, something that made Raven's hackles rise. Nexus stumbled, their bioluminescent markings flickering weakly. Marcus caught them before they could fall, noting how the alien cybernetic implants pulsed with an increasingly erratic rhythm. The healing compound had stabilized their condition, but whatever experiments had been performed on them were clearly taking their toll. "We need to rest," Marcus said, guiding Nexus to a relatively smooth section of wall. Raven took up a guard position at the tunnel junction, her cybernetic eye scanning both directions. "Think you can tell me what's on that data crystal now?" Nexus's color-shifting eyes fixed on Marcus. "Evidence of collaboration between certain Earth officials and my people, not the government, a separate faction. They call themselves the Evolutionary Directive." Marcus felt his blood run cold. He'd heard whispers about the directive during his military service, rumors of unauthorized genetic experiments, of attempts to create hybrid soldiers that could survive in any environment. Most had dismissed it as conspiracy theory. "The experiments," Nexus continued, their voice barely above a whisper. "They weren't just on Ceruleans, humans too. Volunteers at first, then others. They believe they can force evolution, create the perfect beings to survive what's coming." "What's coming?" Marcus asked, but Raven's sudden growl cut off any response. Her cybernetic eye pulsed rapidly, proximity alert. "Company," Marcus muttered, helping Nexus to their feet. Multiple signatures, coming from both directions. He checked his pulse rifle's charge, 60% remaining. Not great odds against what he suspected was coming. The sound of boots on stone echoed through the tunnels. These weren't drones anymore. They'd called in the ground teams. Raven pressed against Marcus's leg, awaiting commands. Her enhanced muscles tensed, ready for action. "There's another way," Nexus said urgently, pointing to what appeared to be a solid wall. "The miners. They built escape routes. Hidden ones." Their long fingers traced a pattern in the rock dust, revealing a faint seam. Marcus activated his tactical visor, switching to structural analysis. Sure enough, there was a void behind the wall, and a clever mechanism that had kept it hidden from standard scans. "How did you know about this?" "The crystal contains more than just evidence. It has maps, security protocols, everything I could steal before." Nexus's voice trailed off as their implants flickered again. The footsteps were getting closer. Marcus made a quick decision, pressing against the hidden seam in a specific pattern. With a pneumatic hiss, a section of wall slid back, revealing a narrow passage. "Raven, rear guard," he ordered, helping Nexus through the opening. They'd barely cleared the entrance when the first energy bolt sizzled past. Marcus spun, returning fire as Raven launched herself at the nearest attacker. Her augmented strength sent the black-clad figure flying backward into their companions. "Keep moving," Marcus shouted to Nexus, providing covering fire as Raven disengaged and bounded back to them. The hidden door began to slide close, but not before Marcus caught a glimpse of their pursuers. They weren't standard military or security forces. Their armor bore no insignia, and their weapons were definitely not regulation. The passage sealed with a decisive click, plunging them into darkness broken only by Nexus's bioluminescence and Raven's cybernetic eye. The sounds of pursuit became muffled, then faded entirely. "They'll find other ways in," Nexus warned, leaning heavily against the tunnel wall. "The directive. They have resources, influence. They've infiltrated both our governments deeply." Marcus checked his neural comm link. Nothing but static down here. They were cut off, running blind except for Nexus's knowledge and Raven's enhanced senses. "Then we better make sure that crystal gets to someone who can use it. You said you have security protocols. Any safe locations in there?" Nexus nodded slowly. "There's one. A research station, abandoned after the peace treaties. Dr. Eleanor Wade. She was part of the original team before she discovered the truth. She's been gathering evidence, building a case, but needed proof of the experimental program. And that's what you have." Marcus gestured to the crystal. "That and more. The location of other facilities, lists of collaborators, genetic sequences they're working with." Nexus straightened slightly, their eyes taking on a steely determination. "Dr. Wade has allies, people who can protect us and expose the truth." A distant explosion rocked the tunnel, sending dust cascading from the ceiling. Raven's ears twitched, and she let out a low whine, her way of warning them that the vibrations were getting stronger. They were using breaching charges, trying to force their way into the hidden network. "How far to this research station?" Marcus asked, already moving deeper into the passage. 10 kilometers north. But there are complications. Security systems that were never deactivated. And the directive will expect us to go there." Marcus checked his remaining equipment, medical supplies, ammunition, emergency rations. Not much, but he'd survived worse odds during the war. "Then we'll give them what they expect." Raven, scout ahead. The dog moved forward silently, her enhanced senses mapping their path. As they followed her deeper into the earth, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something much bigger than a simple conspiracy. The way Nexus had spoken about what's coming suggested there were worse things to fear than shadowy government agencies. Another explosion rumbled through the tunnels, closer this time. Above them, the directive's forces would be spreading out, sealing off exits, preparing for a methodical sweep of the entire network. It was a race now, not just for survival, but for truth. And somewhere in the darkness ahead lay answers that could shake both their worlds to their foundations. The truth emerges. The abandoned research station loomed before them, a testament to broken promises and hidden agendas. Through the pre-dawn mist, its angular silhouette resembled a sleeping creature waiting to wake. Marcus studied the facility through his tactical visor, noting the subtle signs of recent activity. Paths worn through otherwise overgrown areas, electromagnetic signatures that shouldn't exist in a truly abandoned facility. Raven crouched beside him, her cybernetic eye processing the same data. The past 6 hours of navigating the tunnel network had left them all exhausted, but they couldn't afford to rest, not with the directive's forces still hunting them. "The security systems," Nexus whispered, their bioluminescent markings dimmed to barely visible levels. "They're still active, but different. Someone has modified them." Their cybernetic implants pulsed weakly, a reminder of how much strength the journey had cost them. Marcus adjusted his pulse rifle's settings. Different how? The original protocols were designed to keep people out. These, Nexus's color-shifting eyes narrowed. These are designed to keep something in. A distant howl echoed across the complex, unlike any Earth creature Marcus had ever heard. Raven's ears flattened against her skull, and she let out a low growl. Her enhanced muscles tensed, ready for action. Dr. Wade's lab is in the East Wing, Nexus continued, pointing to a partially collapsed section of the building. But we must be careful. The directive, they didn't just experiment with genetics. They were trying to merge technologies, create hybrid beings that could survive in environments no natural life form could endure. Marcus thought of Raven's cybernetic enhancements, of Nexus's surgical scars. Like what they did to you. I was one of their early successes, but they went further, much further. Nexus's voice trembled. The crystal contains footage, experiments that should never have been attempted. They believed they could control it, but... Another howl cut through the air, closer this time. Raven's cybernetic eye pulsed red. A warning. Something was moving through the complex, following an irregular pattern that suggested both intelligence and instinct. We need to move, Marcus decided. Raven, point. Stay low, stay quiet. They advanced through the facility's outer perimeter, avoiding the main entrance's exposed areas. Marcus noticed strange marks on the walls. Claw marks, but not from any natural creature. Some were high enough that whatever made them must have been at least 3 meters tall. The East Wing's entrance was partially blocked by debris, but Nexus identified a maintenance access that was still viable. As they approached, Raven suddenly stopped, her entire body rigid with tension. A shadow moved behind the broken windows above them. Something large, something that shouldn't exist. Marcus raised his rifle, but Nexus grabbed his arm. Don't, they whispered. Sound attracts them. The specimens, they hunt by vibration. The shadow passed, accompanied by the soft click of claws on metal. Marcus waited until Raven's posture relaxed slightly before moving forward again. They'd reached the maintenance access, and Nexus quickly interfaced with the security panel, their cybernetic implants connecting directly with the facility's systems. The door slid open with a barely audible hiss, revealing a darkened corridor. Emergency lighting cast everything in a sickly red glow, creating more shadows than illumination. The air smelled wrong, sterile, but with an underlying organic tang that made Marcus's combat instincts scream danger. They found Dr. Wade's lab, but it was clear they weren't the first to arrive. The room had been ransacked, equipment destroyed, data stations smashed. But it was the message scrawled across one wall that made Marcus's blood run cold. They guilled out. No, Nexus breathed, rushing to a seemingly intact console. Their fingers flew across the interface, accessing hidden directories. The containment protocols. Someone deliberately disabled them. But why would? A scream echoed through the facility, human this time. Raven's head snapped toward the sound, her enhanced hearing picking up details Marcus couldn't perceive. There are others here. She communicated through her neural link to Marcus. Multiple heartbeats, elevated stress levels, and something else, something wrong. Before Marcus could respond, the console Nexus was working on flickered to life, projecting a holographic message. Dr. Eleanor Wade's face appeared, her expression grim. If you're seeing this, it means my worst fears have been confirmed. The directive isn't just trying to create superior soldiers. They're preparing for something they call the convergence. They believe our universe is about to collide with another, one where the laws of physics and biology are fundamentally different. They're experiments. They're trying to create beings that can survive in both realities. The message continued, but a crash from somewhere above cut through the revelation. Dust rained from the ceiling as something heavy moved across the upper floor. The specimens, Nexus said, their voice tight with fear. They're not failed experiments. They're successful ones. The directive achieved what they wanted. Hybrid creatures that exist partially in our reality and partially in another. But they can't control them. No one can. Marcus checked his rifle's charge, 40% remaining. Not nearly enough if what he suspected was coming found them. How many? Originally, 12. But they breed. They adapt. Nexus stopped as Raven let out a warning growl. The ventilation duct above them began to deform, metal groaning as something pushed against it from within. Something that shouldn't exist in their universe, something born of humanity's arrogance and fear of the unknown. "Run," Marcus commanded, and for once, no one argued. Convergence. They ran through corridors bathed in emergency lighting, the sounds of pursuit echoing from multiple directions. Raven led the way, her enhanced senses guiding them through the maze-like facility. Behind them, something moved with unnatural speed, its movements defying normal physics. The security center. Nexus gasped between breaths, their cybernetic implants flickering erratically. 2 levels down. "We can initiate emergency containment protocols." Marcus's tactical visor highlighted structural weaknesses in the walls around them. Signs of something eating through the metal and concrete. Those protocols didn't work the first time. "What makes you think?" A creature burst through the wall ahead of them, cutting off his words. In the red emergency lighting, Marcus caught glimpses of its impossible geometry. Limbs that bent in ways that shouldn't work, skin that seemed to phase in and out of their reality. Raven launched herself at it without hesitation, her cybernetic enhancements giving her the strength to knock it back. "The stairs," Marcus shouted, firing his pulse rifle. The energy bolts passed through the creature as if it was partially immaterial, but the impacts seemed to disorient it. "Move." They descended into darkness, the emergency lighting failing on the lower levels. Nexus's bioluminescence provided the only illumination, casting everything in an ethereal glow. Raven rejoined them, her fur singed but otherwise unharmed. "The specimens," Nexus explained as they ran. "They exist in a quantum state between realities. Conventional weapons can't harm them directly, but energy disrupts their ability to maintain coherence in our universe." "Great," Marcus muttered, checking his rifle's charge. 25% remaining. "Any other weaknesses we should know about?" "They can't maintain their phase state indefinitely. Forces them to periodically become fully material." That's when a scream from above cut off Nexus's explanation. Human screams, followed by the distinctive sound of directive weapons fire. The hunting teams, Marcus realized. They're being picked off. They'd reached the security center, its reinforced doors hanging open. Inside, banks of monitors showed feeds from still-functioning cameras throughout the facility. On several screens, Marcus could see directive forces engaged in desperate battles with the specimens. They were losing. Nexus moved to the main console, their implants interfacing with the system. The original containment protocols were flawed because they only addressed physical containment. But Dr. Wade, she found another way. The screens flickered, showing new data. Complex equations scrolled past, describing concepts that made Marcus's head hurt to look at them. "What am I looking at?" "Quantum frequency manipulation," Nexus said, their fingers flying over the controls. "If we can't contain them physically, we can force them to fully materialize in one reality or the other." But what? "The power requirements are enormous, and the process will affect anything with quantum phase technology, including my implants and Raven's enhancements." Marcus looked at his canine partner, understanding the implications. The cybernetic enhancements had saved her life, become part of her. Removing them could kill her. Raven met his gaze, her organic eye and cybernetic one both showing the same determination. "Do it," she communicated through their neural link. "Better than letting those things loose in the world." Before Marcus could respond, new alarms blared. On the monitors, they could see more directive forces approaching the facility. Heavy weapons, assault vehicles, and something else. Something that made Nexus's bioluminescent markings pulse with fear. "No," they whispered. They'd brought a phaser. The new arrival appeared on the screens. A massive humanoid figure in advanced armor, its systems clearly derived from the same technology that created the specimens. As they watched, it passed through a solid wall as if it wasn't there. "What is that thing?" The next stage of evolution. according to the directive, a controlled hybrid, capable of phase shifting at will. They think they've perfected the process, but they don't understand. The convergence can't be controlled, only survived. The phaser moved through the facility with purpose, heading directly for their position. Behind it, more specimens emerged, as if drawn to its presence. "How long to initialize the containment protocol?" Marcus asked, positioning himself by the door. 3 minutes to power up. Another 2 to activate. Nexus implants sparked as they connected deeper with the facility's systems. But someone needs to maintain the connection manually. The system was damaged. Marcus understood. Someone would have to stay behind, keep the system running while the others escaped. He looked at Raven, saw the same understanding in her eyes. "I'll do it," Nexus said quietly. "My implants are failing anyway. And I helped create this. Help them perfect the phase technology. I should be the one to end it." The sound of battle drew closer. On the monitors, they could see the phaser eliminating anything in its path. Directive forces, specimens, it didn't seem to care. Its only goal was reaching them, reaching the data crystal that could expose everything. Marcus made his decision. "Raven, guard the door. Buy us as much time as you can." He turned to Nexus. "Show me what controls I need to maintain. You're not doing this alone." The alien's color-shifting eyes widened. "But your dog, the effects." Raven made her choice. "We all did, the moment we decided to help you." Marcus checked his rifle one last time. "Now show me what to do. We've got a universe to save." Outside, the specimens howled, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The phaser drew closer, its presence distorting reality around it. And in the security center, 3 unlikely allies prepared to make their last stand against forces that threatened not just their world, but all possible worlds. Dawn of understanding. The security center screens flickered with static as reality itself seemed to bend around them. Marcus's hands flew across the controls as Nexus had shown him, fighting to maintain the quantum containment field stability. Each passing second felt like an eternity as the power systems strained under the enormous energy demands. Raven stood guard at the door, her cybernetic eye pulsing with warning signals as the phaser drew closer. Through their neural link, Marcus could feel her determination, her acceptance of what was to come. The specimen's howls had changed, becoming more desperate as the containment field began to affect them. "Field strength at 60%, Nexus announced, their own implants sparking and failing as the quantum frequencies shifted. "We need to reach 85 for full materialization." A massive impact shook the facility. On the monitors, they watched as the phaser phased through another wall, now only 2 sections away from their position. Its advanced armor gleamed with otherworldly energy, a mockery of both human and alien engineering. "Why?" Marcus asked, adjusting power flow to compensate for fluctuations. Why did the directive think they could control this? Nexus's bioluminescent markings flickered weakly. "Fear. They discovered the convergence was coming decades ago. A natural phenomenon. Universes that touch briefly every few million years. But this time the contact would be permanent. They thought they could create beings that could survive in both states of reality." Another impact. Closer. Raven's growl deepened as she positioned herself between the door and her companions. "Field at 70%, Marcus reported. Through the security feeds, he could see specimens throughout the facility beginning to lose their phase shift abilities, becoming fully material. Some disappeared entirely, drawn back to their own reality. Others collapsed, their impossible biology unable to exist fully in either universe. The door exploded inward. Raven launched herself at the first specimen to enter, her enhanced strength letting her tear into flesh that was now fully material. But behind it came the phaser, its armored form still shifting between states despite the containment field. The crystal, it spoke, its voice a mixture of human and something else. "Give us the crystal, and you can live." Marcus raised his pulse rifle, knowing it would do little good. So the directive can keep playing God. Keep creating monsters. We're trying to save humanity. The phaser stepped forward, casually throwing Raven aside when she attacked again. The convergence will destroy everything unless we adapt. 80%, Nexus called out. Their voice was weaker now, their implants failing one by one. But the system's destabilizing. We can't maintain it much longer. The phaser raised its hand, energy crackling around it. Last chance, the crystal. Marcus met the creature's gaze through its visor. You want the crystal? Here. He pulled it from his pocket and held it up. But did your masters tell you what's really on it? The truth about what the experiments did to the test subjects, to their minds. The phaser hesitated for a fraction of a second. That was all Raven needed. She struck from behind, her remaining cybernetic enhancements giving her the strength to damage the creature's armor where it had materialized. The phaser staggered, its phase shift flickering. Now, Nexus screamed, slamming their failing body into the main console. Energy surged through the facility as they channeled everything they had left into the containment field. The quantum frequencies aligned, reality shuddered, and for a moment, everything existed in perfect clarity. The phaser's armor failed completely, leaving it fully material. Its true form was revealed. A twisted amalgamation of human and alien technology, a being that should never have existed. It reached for Marcus with desperate strength, but Raven was there, her loyalty overriding even the pain of her failing enhancements. Field at 90%. Marcus shouted over the chaos. Full materialization in 5, 4. The phaser screamed, a sound that contained all the fear and arrogance that had driven the directive's experiments. Around them, the remaining specimens were either vanishing or collapsing as they were forced fully into one reality or the other. 3, 2. The convergence is still coming, the phaser gasped. You've doomed us all. No, Nexus said softly, their lights dimming. We've saved you from yourselves. The convergence, it was never going to be what you thought. Our universes weren't meant to merge, only to learn from each other, to understand. The containment field reached full power. Reality snapped back into proper alignment with a force that shook the facility to its foundations. The phaser collapsed, its hybrid technology unable to sustain its existence in a single universe. Throughout the facility, the specimens met similar fates. In the aftermath, as emergency systems blared and distant explosions marked the directive's attempts to cover their tracks, Marcus held Raven close. Her cybernetic enhancements were dead, but her organic eye still held the same intelligence and loyalty it always had. She would adapt. They all would. Nexus lay slumped over the console, their implants dark, but their bioluminescence still pulsing faintly. The crystal, they whispered. Get it to Dr. Wade's allies. The world needs to know, needs to prepare. For the real convergence, Marcus understood finally. Not an invasion or an apocalypse, but a moment of contact. A chance for both universes to share knowledge, to grow, to understand each other without forcing change through artificial means. He pocketed the crystal and lifted Nexus gently. Raven led the way, her natural instincts now guiding them instead of artificial enhancements. Above, dawn was breaking. Somewhere out there, the directive's leaders were realizing their experiments had failed, but they had also succeeded in ways they never intended. They had brought together three beings who should have been enemies, taught them to trust, to sacrifice, to believe in something greater than survival, and perhaps that understanding, that ability to bridge differences without losing what made them unique, was the real key to surviving the changes ahead. As they emerged from the facility into the morning light, Marcus looked at his companions, a loyal dog learning to live without her enhancements, an alien who had risen above their programming to do what was right, and himself, a soldier who had chosen conscience over duty. They were changed, but not in the way the directive had intended. They were stronger for their differences, united by choice rather than force. The real work was just beginning. They had a crystal full of truth to share, a conspiracy to expose, and a world to prepare for the true nature of the convergence. But for now, in the quiet of the dawn, they had each other. And sometimes, that was enough to face whatever the universe, any universe, had in store.